Marcus Chen stood in his penthouse office 67 floors above Manhattan, the city sprawling beneath him like a conquered kingdom, and heard his 6-month-old daughter screaming. The sound cut through the reinforced glass, through the insulated walls, through the carefully constructed barrier between his billion-dollar empire and the domestic chaos he'd paid handsomely to avoid. It was 2:47 a.m., and Marcus had been reviewing acquisition documents for the past 8 hours. The scream pierced his concentration like a needle through silk. He'd heard Emma cry before, of course. Brief, manageable episodes that the nanny, his wife, insisted on calling her the infant care specialist, handled with professional efficiency. But this sound was different. Raw. Primal. The kind of scream that activated something ancient in the human brain, something that bypassed logic and went straight to the bone. Marcus set down his fountain pen. A Mont Blanc Meister stuck, $4,800, the same model his father never could have afforded, and walked toward the nursery wing. The hallway stretched before him, 30 feet of imported Italian marble that Victoria had chosen during their renovation. The house should reflect our position, she'd told him. Marcus remembered nodding, signing the checks, understanding that his wife's vocabulary now included words like position and appropriate and optics. The woman he'd married 12 years ago, the law student with 3 jobs and holes in her sneakers, had evolved into someone who measured success in square footage and guest list exclusivity. The screaming intensified. Marcus quickened his pace, his Tom Ford slippers making no sound on the cold stone. He'd built Chen Technologies from nothing, a college dropout with a revolutionary encryption algorithm and $30,000 in credit card debt. Now, at 41, he was worth $2.3 billion. He'd negotiated with heads of state, stared down hostile boardrooms, and rebuilt his company twice after devastating failures. But he had no idea how to respond to his own daughter's cries. The nursery door was closed, locked from the inside. Marcus knocked. "Hello? Is everything okay in there?" No response, just Emma's screaming, now accompanied by choking sounds that made his chest tighten. He knocked harder. "Open the door." Nothing. Marcus tried the handle again, then pulled out his phone to call Victoria. Straight to voicemail. She was at a charity gala in the Hamptons. Something about pediatric cancer research. He'd written a check for $100,000 and sent her in his place, as had become their routine. He was about to call the nanny when he heard footsteps behind him. "Mr. Chen?" He turned to find Rosa Delgado, the night housekeeper, standing in the hallway. She wore her standard gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Rosa had been with them for 3 months, a quiet woman in her 50s, who cleaned while they slept and disappeared before breakfast. Marcus had probably spoken directly to her fewer than 10 times. "The door's locked," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Emma's crying. Where's Miss Bradford?" Ms. Bradford was the nanny, $85,000 a year, impeccable references, a PhD in child development from Stanford. Rosa's expression shifted. Something flickered across her face. Was it fear? Recognition? She moved closer, listening to the screams. "Mr. Chen," she said quietly. "How long has the door been locked?" "I don't know. I just heard, sir." Rosa's voice carried an unusual urgency. "When was the last time you saw your daughter?" The question hit Marcus like a slap. He opened his mouth to answer and realized he couldn't. "Yesterday morning?" No, he'd left for the office at 5 a.m. before Emma woke up. The day before, he'd been in Singapore. The week blurred into a cascade of meetings, flights, deals closing and opening like doors in an endless hallway. Thursday," he said. "Maybe Wednesday?" Today was Saturday. Rosa walked to the door and pressed her ear against it. Emma's screams had dissolved into weak, hiccuping sobs. Rosa's face went pale. "Mr. Chen," she said, I need to tell you something. But first, we need to get this door open." "What are you talking about?" "There's a key. Ms. Bradford keeps it on her keyring, but I know where." "Just tell me what's happening." Rosa looked at him with an expression Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. It combined pity, anger, and a terrible knowing sadness. "Your daughter," Rosa said slowly, "has been locked in that room for 17 hours. The world tilted. "That's impossible. Ms. Bradford wouldn't. Ms. Bradford left yesterday morning at 8 a.m. She does this every Friday. She'll come back Sunday evening." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "The door gets locked. The baby stays inside, alone, from Friday morning until Sunday night, every single weekend since I started working here." The words made no sense. They were sounds without meaning, a foreign language Marcus's brain refused to translate. "You're lying." "Sir, your daughter has been screaming for help since 10 a.m. yesterday. I've been listening to it through the walls all day. I've been listening to it every weekend for 3 months. Marcus's hands had started shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried, Mr. Chen. I sent you 3 emails. I stopped your wife in the hallway twice. She told me if I mentioned it again, I'd be fired and reported to immigration." The hallway seemed to narrow. Marcus thought about Victoria's increasing distance over the past year, her obsession with maintaining their social position, her insistence that he not interfere with the childcare arrangements. "You're too busy to micromanage," she'd told him. "That's why we pay professionals." Emma's crying had faded to barely audible whimpers. "Get the key," Marcus said. "Now." Rosa ran. Marcus pressed his hand against the door. The wood was expensive, hand-carved mahogany, imported from sustainable forests in Guatemala. Victoria had shown him the catalog. "The nursery should be perfect," she'd said. He'd signed the check without looking at it. "Emma," he called through the door. "Daddy's here. We're going to get you out." A soft sound from inside. Not crying. Something worse. Silence. Rosa returned, breathing hard, holding a keyring. Her hands trembled as she sorted through the keys. "How do you know about the emails I didn't see?" Marcus asked. "Because Mrs. Chen showed them to me. She wanted me to see that you deleted them without reading. She said you didn't care about. She called Emma, the helps problem now." The key turned. The lock clicked. Marcus pushed open the door. The smell hit him first. Urine. Faces. Spoiled milk. The carefully designed nursery, $47,000 worth of organic furniture and hand-painted murals, had been transformed into something else. Something dark. Emma lay in her crib in the center of the room. She wasn't crying anymore. She stared at the ceiling with glassy eyes, her tiny chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Her diaper sagged, clearly unchanged for hours. Dried vomit crusted her sleep sack. An empty bottle lay on the floor. She'd apparently tried to feed herself and failed. But what made Marcus's knees buckle was the system. A baby monitor sat on the dresser, its red light off. Disconnected. The windows had been covered with blackout shades, sealed at the edges with tape. And on the wall, Marcus saw what Rosa must have seen weeks ago. A schedule, handwritten in Victoria's distinctive script. Friday, 8 a.m., Sunday. 8 p.m., nursery closure. Formula, 3 bottles, room temperature acceptable. Diapers, not necessary, saves changing time. Monitoring, disabled, prevents sleep disruption alerts. Door, locked, maintains schedule integrity. Below it, in different ink, a note. Marcus, this is the only way I can maintain our commitments. Emma's fine. Babies are resilient. This is what rich people do. They outsource. Stop being sentimental. Marcus stumbled forward and picked up his daughter. She was limp, burning with fever. Her lips were cracked, her eyes sunken. When had she last been given water? How many bottles were supposed to last 40 hours? Call 911, Marcus said. His voice sounded distant, disconnected from his body. Rosa already had her phone out. Emma made a weak sound and turned her face into Marcus's chest. She was so light. Hadn't she been heavier last week, last month? When had he last held her? "Stay with me, baby," Marcus whispered. "Stay with Daddy." But even as he said it, he thought, "I'm not her daddy. Not really. I'm the man who signed the checks and didn't ask questions. I'm the man who built a billion-dollar company and couldn't protect a 6-month-old child." Rosa spoke rapid Spanish into her phone, then switched to English. "Ambulance is 3 minutes away. Mr. Chen, her temperature is very high. We need to cool her down, but not too fast. I'll get lukewarm water and washcloths." She ran. "Get." Marcus sank into the rocking chair, hand-carved maple $3,200, and held his daughter. Emma's eyes focused on his face for just a moment. Did she recognize him? Could she? What kind of father becomes a stranger to his own child? The answer was simple. The kind of father Marcus had become. He'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Flushing, Queens. His parents had worked triple shifts, his father in a restaurant kitchen, his mother in a garment factory, to pay for Marcus's education. They'd sacrificed everything. "Make something of yourself," his father had said. "That's why we came here. So you wouldn't have to live like this." Marcus had taken that commandment and built an empire. But somewhere along the way, making something of himself had transformed into something else. Something his parents wouldn't recognize. Rosa returned with supplies. She showed Marcus how to gently cool Emma's skin, how to offer water with a dropper, how to check her responsiveness. "You've done this before," Marcus said. "I have 5 children, Mr. Chen, and 7 grandchildren." Rosa's voice was soft but firm. "I know what babies need, and I know what happens when they don't get it." "Why did you stay?" "Because someone had to watch her. Someone had to know." The sirens grew louder. Marcus looked around the nursery, at the expensive furniture, the designer wallpaper, the collection of organic toys still in their original packaging. Victoria had spared no expense creating the perfect environment. And then she'd transformed it into a prison. "But I signed every check," Marcus thought. "I approved every purchase. I nodded when Victoria said she had everything under control. I chose not to see." "Mr. Chen," Rosa said, "there's something else you need to know." "What?" "This isn't the first time." Marcus looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Before me, there were 2 other housekeepers. They were both fired within weeks. I found their termination papers in Mrs. Chen's office. The first one left a resignation letter. It said she couldn't stay silent about the baby situation anymore. The second one filed a complaint with child services. And Mrs. Chen made it go away. I found the documentation. Her father, the judge, made some calls. The case was closed as unfounded. Victoria's father, Judge Richard Morrison, one of the most influential jurists in New York, with connections that ran deep through law enforcement and social services. Marcus thought about all the times Victoria had mentioned her father's help with various issues. "Daddy's taking care of it," she'd say. Marcus had always assumed she meant business permits or zoning issues for their properties. Never this. The paramedics arrived. What followed was a blur of medical jargon and urgent procedures, severe dehydration, possible infection, concerning weight loss, suspicious patterning of. The lead paramedic paused, choosing his words carefully. Neglect. "We're transporting to Mount Sinai," the paramedic said. "Pediatric emergency." "Sir, are you the father?" "Yes. We'll need a full history. When did these symptoms start? When was her last checkup? Has she been eating normally?" Marcus realized he couldn't answer any of these questions. The paramedic's expression hardened. "We're mandated reporters, sir. We have to notify the authorities about the conditions we found here." "Good," Marcus said. "You should." They loaded Emma into the ambulance. Rosa tried to step back, but Marcus caught her arm. "You're coming with us," he said. "Mr. Chen, I should stay and you know more about my daughter than I do. You're the only one who tried to help her. You're coming." In the ambulance, Marcus watched the paramedics work on Emma. IV line, oxygen, constant monitoring. She looked even smaller under the bright medical lights. His phone buzzed. "Victoria, where are you? The gala photos are happening, and you should be here. This is important for our brand." Marcus stared at the message. Our brand. She'd started using that phrase 6 months ago, around the time Emma was born. We need to protect our brand. This event is crucial for our brand. Emma's nanny is part of our brand image. He typed one sentence. Our daughter is in an ambulance. Check your messages. Then he blocked her number. At the hospital, everything accelerated. Emma was rushed into pediatric intensive care. Doctors asked questions Marcus couldn't answer. Rosa filled in what she could. Feeding schedules, crying patterns, the weekend lockdowns. A hospital social worker arrived. Young woman, kind eyes, legal pad. "Mr. Chen, I need to understand the timeline here. When did you first become aware of your daughter's condition?" "Tonight. 2 hours ago." "And before tonight? When did you last check on her?" Marcus forced himself to answer honestly. "I don't know. Days ago. Maybe a week." The social worker wrote something down. "Who is Emma's primary caregiver?" "We have a nanny, Ms. Bradford, and my wife manages the household." "Where is your wife now?" "At a party." More notes. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to be direct with you. The injuries and condition we're seeing suggest sustained neglect. Your daughter has lost approximately 15% of her body weight. She has a severe UTI from unchanged diapers. There are signs of prolonged distress. This didn't happen tonight. This has been building." "I know." "You know?" "Rosa told me. About the weekends. About the locked doors. About my wife's system." The social worker set down her pen. "And you weren't aware of this system before tonight?" "No. But that's not an excuse. I should have known. I should have been here." "Where were you?" "Working." Marcus laughed bitterly. "I was always working, building a company, making money, buying things. I bought my daughter a $47,000 nursery and didn't spend 15 minutes a day with her." The social worker's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained professional. "Child Protective Services will be involved. There will be an investigation. I need you to understand that both parents are responsible for a child's welfare, regardless of work schedules. I understand. Do you? Because from what I'm seeing, your daughter was systematically isolated and neglected while you were in the same house. That's not absent parenting, Mr. Chen. That's willful ignorance." The words hit like physical blows, but Marcus didn't flinch. He deserved them. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we wait for the doctors to stabilize Emma. Then we figure out next steps." She paused. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. If we release Emma from the hospital, can you guarantee her safety?" Marcus thought about Victoria, about the judge, about the system they'd built together, a perfect facade hiding something rotten. "Not in my current household," he said. "Not with my wife. But yes, with me alone. With Rosa's help. I can keep her safe. That's not how this usually works. We don't just separate parents without—" "My wife locked our daughter in a room for 17 hours. She has a system for doing this every weekend. She threatened the only person who tried to help, and her father is a judge who's already buried one complaint." Marcus looked the social worker directly in the eyes. "If you send Emma back into that house with Victoria, you're sending her back into danger. So what do we need to do to prevent that?" The social worker studied him for a long moment. "I need to make some calls." She left. Rosa appeared with terrible coffee from the vending machine. "She's going to survive," Rosa said. "Emma, the nurse told me. They caught it in time. Because of you." "No, Mr. Chen, because you finally listened." They sat in silence for a while, watching doctors move through the hallway. "I'm going to lose everything, aren't I?" Marcus said. Rosa sipped her coffee. "Maybe. Or maybe you'll finally understand what you actually have." At 6:47 a.m., as dawn broke over Manhattan, a doctor emerged. "Mr. Chen, your daughter is stable. We'll need to keep her for 72 hours minimum for observation and continued treatment. But she's going to be okay." Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. Relief. Shame. Grief for all the time he'd wasted. "Can I see her?" "For a few minutes. She's sedated, but you can sit with her." Emma lay in a hospital crib, dwarfed by medical equipment. The IV in her tiny arm, the oxygen tube, the monitor showing heart rate and blood pressure. She looked fragile and impossibly small. Marcus pulled a chair close and took her hand. It was warm now, properly warm. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I chose everything else over you. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening." Emma's fingers twitched in her sleep. "I don't know how to be a father," Marcus continued. "My dad worked 90-hour weeks so I could have a future. I thought that's what fathers did. Work, provide, build something. I didn't realize I was building a prison. For you. For me. For all of us." He thought about his father, dead now 6 years, and wondered what the old man would say if he could see this. Marcus had built the empire his father dreamed of, but he'd lost everything his father valued: family, presence, basic human decency. "It's going to be different now," Marcus said. "I don't know what that looks like yet, but it starts with me being here. Actually, being here." A soft knock at the door. Rosa appeared with the social worker. "Mr. Chen," the social worker said, "we need to talk about next steps." But what Marcus didn't know yet, what nobody in that hospital room could have predicted, was that the real crisis was just beginning. Victoria arrived at Mount Sinai at 7:15 a.m., accompanied by 2 lawyers and her father. Marcus was still in Emma's room when security called. "Mr. Chen, your wife is here with her legal team. They're demanding access. Tell them I'll meet them in the waiting room in 5 minutes." Marcus kissed Emma's forehead and stood. His whole body ached, not from physical exhaustion, but from the weight of what was coming. Rosa waited in the hallway. "I called my daughter," she said quietly. "She's a paralegal. She says you need a lawyer. Now." "I have lawyers." "No, Mr. Chen. You have corporate lawyers. You need a family lawyer. Someone who deals with custody, with protection orders. My daughter gave me a name." She handed him a business card. "This woman handles cases like yours. High profile, complicated. She's expecting your call." Marcus looked at the card. Miriam Goldstein, family law attorney. He tucked it into his pocket. "Thank you, Rosa." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly." She wasn't wrong. Victoria stood in the center of the waiting room like she was holding court. She wore last night's gala dress, a custom Valentino worth more than most people's cars, and her jewelry caught the harsh fluorescent light. Her makeup was still perfect. Not a hair out of place. Judge Richard Morrison stood beside her, imposing in a dark suit. The lawyers flanked them like sentries. Marcus felt underdressed in his home clothes, unshaven, eyes red from lack of sleep. But he also felt something else. Clarity. "Marcus," Victoria said, her voice sharp. "What is this nonsense about Emma being in the hospital? She was dehydrated, malnourished, and locked in a room for 17 hours. That's not nonsense. That's criminal neglect." Victoria's expression didn't change. Don't be dramatic. I left specific instructions with Ms. Bradford. If there was an issue, that's her responsibility. Ms. Bradford wasn't here. You locked our daughter in a room for the weekend. Alone. You've been doing it every weekend for months. That's ridiculous. I found your schedule on the wall, Victoria. Your handwriting. Your system. Judge Morrison stepped forward. Marcus, you're clearly upset and exhausted. Let's all take a breath and discuss this rationally. Stay out of this, Richard. The judge's face hardened. That's no way to speak to your father-in-law. You covered up a child services complaint. Rosa told me everything. I have no idea what you're talking about. The housekeeper who filed a report 3 months ago, the one who said Emma was being neglected, you made it disappear. One of Victoria's lawyers, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, stepped forward. Mr. Chen, you're making serious accusations without evidence. I'd advise you to be very careful. Marcus pulled out his phone. Rosa photographed Victoria's schedule before we left the house. She also recorded her statement about the weekend lockdowns, and the hospital has documented Emma's condition that doctors say reflects sustained neglect over weeks or months. He was bluffing about some of it. Rosa had taken photos, but he wasn't sure about her statement recording. But he needed them to believe he had evidence. Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. You're listening to the help now? A housekeeper who's probably trying to extort us? Her name is Rosa, and she's the only reason Emma is alive. Don't be absurd. Emma is fine. Babies cry. That's what they do. Emma weighed 9 pounds when we brought her home from the hospital 6 months ago. Do you know what she weighs now? Silence. 8 pounds, 4 ounces. She's lost weight. She's 6 months old, and she's smaller than she was at birth. Victoria's lawyer interrupted. My client will not be responding to these accusations. Mr. Chen, if you're planning to pursue this matter legally, we'll address it through appropriate channels. I'm not pursuing it. Child Protective Services is. The hospital filed a mandatory report 2 hours ago. Judge Morrison's jaw tightened. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. You're about to make a terrible mistake. If you push this forward, it becomes public. Your business will suffer. Your reputation will be destroyed. And for what? A disagreement about childcare methods? A disagreement? Marcus felt rage building in his chest. Your daughter locked a baby in a room and left her to scream. That's not a disagreement about methods. That's abuse. Abuse? Victoria laughed. A cold, brittle sound. I gave Emma everything. A beautiful nursery. The best nanny money can buy. Private health care. A trust fund worth $1 million. What did you give her? You were never here. You don't even know your own daughter. The words landed like artillery shells, because they were partially true. Marcus had been absent. He had chosen work over presence, but he'd done it believing that Victoria was managing their home, their child, their life. He'd been wrong. You're right, Marcus said quietly. I wasn't here. I was building a company, making money, trying to provide the life we said we wanted. But I trusted you. I trusted that while I was working, you were being a mother. Instead, you were... what? Attending parties? Maintaining appearances? I was building our social position, Victoria snapped. Someone had to. Your tech bro friends are fine for business, but we needed real connections, real influence. That requires time, commitment, sacrifice. So you sacrificed our daughter? I made rational choices. Emma has everything she needs: food, shelter, health care, more than most children in the world. So she spent some time alone. So what? That's how children learn independence. Marcus stared at his wife and realized he was looking at a stranger. When had this happened? When had the woman he married, the one who'd cried watching videos of shelter animals, who'd volunteered at soup kitchens, who'd talked about wanting to make the world better, transformed into someone who could rationalize locking a baby in a room? Or had she always been this way, and he'd simply been too busy to notice? "Victoria," Marcus said, "I want you to leave. I want you to go back to the house, pack a bag, and leave. Today. You can't kick me out of my own home. It's not your home anymore. As of right now, I'm filing for divorce. I'm seeking full custody of Emma, and I'm cooperating completely with the CPS investigation." Judge Morrison stepped forward. "Marcus, think about what you're doing. You have no evidence of wrongdoing. You have the word of a housekeeper, an immigrant who could be deported with one phone call, and some vague hospital reports. We have resources, connections, the best lawyers in New York. If you try to fight this, we will bury you." Is that a threat? It's reality. You may have money, but we have power. Real power. The kind that exists in courtrooms and police precincts and social service offices. Do you really think you'll win this? Marcus thought about his father again. The old man had come to America with $400 and a dream. He'd worked himself to death, literally heart attack at 63 in the middle of his restaurant shift, believing that in America, justice prevailed. That hard work and truth mattered more than connections and corruption. Marcus had spent his adult life learning how naive that belief was. But standing in this hospital waiting room, looking at his daughter's grandfather, threatening to use his position to protect child abuse, Marcus decided his father had been right about one thing. Some battles are worth fighting even if you lose. "Yes," Marcus said, "I think I'll win. But even if I don't, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. Every newspaper, every social media platform, every business connection I have. The Chen Technologies empire might not scare you, but my ability to make this story go viral should." "You wouldn't dare," Victoria said. "The embarrassment. The scandal. Your investors will run." "Let them run. I'll rebuild. I've done it before." He pulled out Rosa's card and dialed. The lawyer answered on the second ring. "Ms. Goldstein, my name is Marcus Chen. I need immediate representation for an emergency custody situation. How soon can you get to Mount Sinai Hospital?" While he talked, he watched Victoria's face. For the first time, he saw genuine fear. "Good." Miriam Goldstein arrived 40 minutes later, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the assembled parties and immediately moved Marcus into a private conference room. "Tell me everything," she said. "And I mean everything. Don't sugarcoat. Don't minimize. I need to understand what we're dealing with." Marcus talked about the locked doors, about Rosa's discovery, about Emma's condition, about the previous housekeepers, and Victoria's father's interference. Miriam took notes, her expression never changing. When Marcus finished, she sat back. "Okay," she said. "This is what's going to happen. First, we're going to get an emergency protective order, preventing Victoria from having unsupervised contact with Emma. Second, we're going to fully cooperate with CPS and make sure they have everything they need for their investigation. Third, we're going to file for divorce and full custody immediately, today if possible. Victoria's father is a judge. I know Richard Morrison. He's a bully who's gotten used to making problems disappear. But he's not invincible, and this isn't a situation he can sweep under a rug. Hospital documentation is ironclad. Mandatory reporters carry weight. And if he tries to interfere with this case, I'll make sure the State Bar Association knows about it." "You can do that?" Miriam smiled grimly. "Mr. Chen, I've been practicing family law for 35 years. I've gone up against corrupt judges, abusive politicians, and entitled billionaires. Your wife's father doesn't scare me. What scares me is the possibility that your daughter goes back into that house. That's not going to happen. Then we're on the same page. Now let's talk about you. Are you prepared for what's coming? Because Victoria and her father are going to come at you hard. They'll paint you as an absent father. They'll say you're lying to cover your own negligence. They'll drag up every mistake you've ever made. Your business dealings, your personal life, everything. Marcus thought about the last 10 years, the 100-hour work weeks, the missed birthdays and anniversaries, the times he'd chosen a business trip over a family dinner, the slow erosion of his marriage that he'd ignored because it was easier than confronting. "I'm not innocent," Marcus said. "I was absent. I did fail Emma. But I didn't lock her in a room. I didn't leave her to scream. And I'm not going to let Victoria use my mistakes to justify her abuse." Good, because in court, we'll need to acknowledge your failings while making it clear that absent is not the same as abusive. Understood? Understood. One more thing. Rosa, the housekeeper. We need her testimony. Is she willing? I think so. But Victoria threatened her with deportation. Is Rosa documented? I don't know. I never asked. Miriam made a note. Find out. If she's undocumented, we need to be strategic about how we use her testimony. The last thing we want is to get her deported for trying to help your daughter. Marcus felt a wave of shame. Rosa had risked everything to protect Emma, and Marcus hadn't even bothered to learn her immigration status. "I'll find out," he said. "And Ms. Goldstein, whatever happens to me, whatever these costs, I need Rosa protected. Can you make that part of your representation?" Miriam studied him. "You really care about this woman you barely know. She cared about my daughter when nobody else did, when I didn't. That makes her family. All right, Mr. Chen, I'll add Rosa to our protection list. Now let's go see what Victoria and the judge want to discuss." They returned to the waiting room to find it crowded. Victoria's legal team had expanded. Now there were 4 lawyers, plus a PR consultant Marcus recognized from previous corporate campaigns. Judge Morrison stood by the windows, talking quietly into his phone. Miriam walked straight up to Victoria. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Miriam Goldstein, representing your husband in this matter. We're filing for divorce and emergency custody this afternoon. If you'd like to avoid a public battle, I suggest you consider a reasonable settlement." Victoria's lead lawyer stepped forward. "Ms. Goldstein, with all due respect, you're dramatically overplaying your hand. Our clients are prepared to fight any allegations to the fullest extent of the law." "I'm sure they are. But consider this. In 3 hours, the story of a billionaire couple's child being hospitalized for neglect will hit the news cycle. I have reporters already reaching out. How it's framed depends entirely on your client's cooperation. Are you threatening us? I'm informing you of reality. The hospital has filed mandatory reports. CPS is investigating. This is public record now. The only question is whether Victoria wants to be portrayed as a mother who made mistakes and is seeking help, or as an abuser who's hiding behind her father's connections." Judge Morrison ended his call and walked over. "Ms. Goldstein, I've heard about you. You have a reputation for dramatic accusations and media manipulation. It won't work here." "Judge Morrison, I have a reputation for protecting children from abusive parents, and for making sure corrupt officials don't interfere with justice. Which role do you want to play in this story?" The judge's face reddened. "How dare you? I dare because I have documentation of your interference in the previous complaint. I have evidence that you used your position to make a valid child welfare concern disappear. If you insert yourself into this case in any official capacity, I will file formal ethics complaints and make sure every news outlet knows about it. You have no such evidence. Want to test that theory? Because I'm very comfortable with discovery." The room fell silent. Marcus watched his father-in-law calculate odds, weigh risks, consider his options. This was a man used to winning through intimidation. But Miriam wasn't intimidated. Finally, the judge spoke. "Victoria, I think we should discuss this privately. They huddled in the corner with the lawyers. Marcus couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could read body language. Victoria was angry. Her father was insistent. The lawyers were cautious. After 10 minutes, they returned. Victoria's lead lawyer spoke. "We'd like to propose a temporary arrangement while emotions cool and investigations proceed. Mrs. Chen will voluntarily agree to supervised visitation only. Mr. Chen will have primary physical custody. Neither party will speak publicly about the situation." "No," Miriam said immediately. "Excuse me?" "Victoria doesn't get to dictate terms. Here's what's happening. Marcus gets sole legal and physical custody. Victoria gets supervised visitation only, with a court-appointed supervisor. She stays away from the family home. And most importantly, Judge Morrison removes himself from any involvement in this case, officially or unofficially." "That's completely unreasonable," Victoria's lawyer said. "It's non-negotiable. Your client locked a 6-month-old in a room for 17 hours. The hospital has documented evidence of sustained neglect. CPS is investigating. These aren't divorce squabbles. These are criminal matters. The only reason I'm offering supervised visitation instead of pushing for full termination of parental rights is because I'm trying to give your client a path forward." Victoria stepped forward. "Marcus, please. Can we talk? Alone? Just for a minute?" Marcus looked at Miriam, who nodded slightly. They moved to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Victoria's perfect composure had cracked further. Her eyes were red. Had she been crying? Marcus couldn't tell. "This is insane," Victoria said quietly. "You're destroying our family, destroying our life, all because of one incident." "One incident?" "Victoria, you've been doing this every weekend for months. Emma was fine. She was always fine. She lost 15% of her body weight. Babies have fluctuations. The pediatrician said, 'When was the last time you took her to the pediatrician?'" Silence. "You haven't been taking her to checkups," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Ms. Bradford handles that." "Ms. Bradford doesn't exist outside the hours you pay her. The rest of the time, Emma was alone, in a locked room, screaming. I gave her everything. You gave her money, furniture, a pretty room. But you didn't give her presents, or safety, or love." Victoria's face hardened. "You're one to talk about presents. Where were you? In your office, on your phone, flying around the world making deals. At least I was here." "You're right. I wasn't here. I was absent. I failed as a father. But Victoria, you were worse than absent. You were here, and you chose to hurt her. I never hurt her. Neglect is hurt. Abandonment is hurt. Locking a baby in a room is hurt. The fact that you can't see that terrifies me." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. "I just wanted to be more than a mother." "Is that so wrong? I had plans, Marcus, a career, a life. Then Emma came, and suddenly I was supposed to just disappear? Just become nothing but a caretaker?" Marcus felt a twist of recognition, because he understood that feeling, the fear of being swallowed by parenthood, of losing yourself to someone else's needs. It was part of why he'd thrown himself into work after Emma was born. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. "I get it," Marcus said. "I do. But Victoria, there's a difference between wanting your own life and actively harming your child. You could have talked to me. We could have figured out childcare, or nannies, or au pairs, or any of 1,000 solutions. Instead, you created a system to hide abuse. It wasn't abuse. Tell that to Emma when she's old enough to understand. Tell her how you left her alone in a locked room every weekend because you had parties to attend." Victoria wiped her eyes, and when she looked at Marcus again, the vulnerability was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "You're making a mistake," she said. "My father is powerful. Our lawyers are better, and you're not exactly father of the year. This will get ugly, Marcus. Really ugly. By the time we're done, your business will be in shambles, and you'll be lucky to have supervised visitation yourself. Maybe, but at least Emma will be safe. She was always safe. Keep telling yourself that. Marcus walked back to Miriam. No deal. We do this by the book. Full custody. Supervised visitation. She stays away from Emma and from me. Miriam nodded. Let's file the papers. As they left, Marcus glanced back at Victoria one last time. She stood surrounded by her father and lawyers, already on her phone, probably calling more connections, pulling more strings. He'd loved her once. Maybe he still did, in some distant corner of his heart. But love wasn't enough when your child's safety was at stake. Some bridges need to burn. The next 72 hours were chaos. Emma remained in the hospital under observation. Marcus barely left her side, learning how to feed her, hold her, recognize her needs. It should have been embarrassing, a 41-year-old man learning how to care for his own daughter. But mostly, it just felt urgent. Rosa came every day after finishing her morning cleaning shift. She showed Marcus how to warm bottles to the right temperature, how to burp Emma properly, how to read her cries. Patient lessons Marcus should have learned months ago. Don't beat yourself up too much, Rosa said on the second day. You're learning now. That's what matters. I should have learned 6 months ago. Yes, but you can't change that. You can only change what happens next. The CPS investigation moved forward. Interviews, home inspections, document reviews. Miriam navigated it all, making sure Marcus cooperated fully while protecting his rights. Victoria, meanwhile, had vanished into her father's estate in Connecticut. But her lawyers were everywhere, filing motions, requesting delays, demanding psychiatric evaluations of Marcus, questioning Rosa's credibility. The media discovered the story 3 days in. Tech billionaire's baby hospitalized, custody battle erupts, ran as the lead story on 3 major news sites. By day 4, it had evolved. Marcus Chen files for full custody after alleged neglect by socialite wife. Victoria's PR team spun their own narrative. Devoted mother Victoria Chen fights for daughter against workaholic husband's false claims. The truth, as always, lay buried under competing narratives. Marcus's investors started calling. His board requested emergency meetings. Stock price fluctuated. But Marcus discovered something interesting. He didn't care as much as he thought he would. Let the empire wobble. Emma needed him more. On day 5, Emma was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions, regular feedings, frequent checkups, close monitoring. Marcus hired a pediatric nurse to stay at the house temporarily, not to replace him, but to teach him. And he hired Rosa full-time as, ironically, a household manager. Not because he needed someone to clean, but because Emma needed someone who actually cared about her. Rosa's immigration status turned out to be legal. She had a green card and had been a permanent resident for 15 years. Victoria's deportation threats had been empty. Why did you believe her? Marcus asked. Because when you have an accent and brown skin, people assume you're illegal. Mrs. Chen used that against me. I was afraid if I pushed back, she'd find a way to make me disappear anyway. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, Mr. Chen. Apologize to your daughter by being the father she deserves. The preliminary custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Miriam prepared Marcus for what was coming. They're going to attack you, she warned. They'll paint you as an absent father who's suddenly interested in Emma only to punish Victoria. They'll argue that your work schedule makes you unfit for primary custody. They'll say Emma needs her mother. What do we argue? The truth. That you were absent but not abusive. That you're taking steps to change. That Victoria actively endangered Emma through systematic neglect. We have medical records, Rosa's testimony, and the photos of that schedule on the nursery wall. The facts are on our side. But family court is unpredictable. Judges have enormous discretion, and Judge Morrison has a lot of friends in the system. So we might lose, we might compromise. Shared custody, mandated parenting classes, supervised visitation for both of you initially. Family court rarely does winner take all. Marcus absorbed this. I can live with supervised visitation if I have to. I can take parenting classes. Whatever keeps Emma safe. Good. Because being flexible makes you look reasonable. Being rigid makes you look vindictive. The hearing itself was held in a courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Marcus arrived with Miriam and Rosa. Victoria arrived with 4 lawyers, her father, and a small army of character witnesses, society figures, charity board members, fellow socialites ready to testify to her dedication and motherhood. Judge Patricia Winters presided, a woman in her 50s, with a reputation for tough fairness. Miriam had researched her extensively. Judge Winters had handled several high-profile custody cases and had a track record of prioritizing children's safety over parental rights. She was exactly who they needed. The proceedings started with opening statements. Victoria's lead lawyer painted her as a devoted mother, overwhelmed by postpartum depression, who'd made mistakes but was seeking help. Marcus was portrayed as an absent workaholic, suddenly interested in Emma, only to damage Victoria's reputation. Miriam's opening was surgical. She didn't attack Victoria personally. Instead, she presented facts: the locked room, the schedule, the weight loss, the hospital documentation. She acknowledged Marcus's absence, but distinguished it from Victoria's active neglect. "Your Honor," Miriam said, "this case isn't about which parent is perfect. It's about which parent endangered the child. The evidence will show that Victoria Chen created a system to isolate her daughter, not once, not accidentally, but repeatedly, systematically, and knowingly." Then came testimony. Victoria's witnesses went first, a parade of wealthy women describing Victoria's charity work, her social contributions, her struggles with the pressures of motherhood. The testimony felt rehearsed, superficial. But then Victoria's lawyer called Ms. Bradford, the nanny. Marcus hadn't seen her since the night of Emma's hospitalization. She looked nervous, dressed in a conservative suit, her Stanford credentials prominently mentioned. "Ms. Bradford," Victoria's lawyer said, "can you describe your employment with the Chen family?" "I was hired as Emma's primary caregiver. Full-time position, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And on weekends? I was off. That was part of my employment agreement." "Did you ever lock Emma in her nursery?" "No, never." "Did Mrs. Chen ever instruct you to lock Emma in her nursery?" "No." Marcus felt his stomach drop. She was lying. She had to be. Miriam stood. "Your Honor, may I cross-examine?" "Proceed." Miriam approached the witness stand. "Ms. Bradford, you said you work Monday through Friday. What were your hours?" 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. typically. "And you left the Chen residence every Friday at what time?" 6 p.m. "And returned Monday at 8 a.m.? "Correct." "So you weren't present in the Chen home for approximately 62 hours every weekend. Is that accurate?" "Yes." "During those 62 hours, do you know what happened with Emma?" "I assume Mrs. Chen cared for her." "You assume, but you don't know?" "Well, no, I wasn't there." "Did you ever return to the house on a weekend? Perhaps to pick up something you'd forgotten?" Ms. Bradford hesitated. "Once or twice." "And when you returned, what did you find?" "I don't understand the question." "When you came back to the house on a weekend, was Emma with her mother? Playing in the living room? Being held?" I don't recall the specific circumstances." "You don't recall? Or you don't want to say?" "Objection." Victoria's lawyer stood. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained. Judge Winters said. Ms. Goldstein, rephrase. Ms. Bradford, did you ever hear Emma crying while you were present in the house on a weekend? Long pause. Perhaps. And where was the crying coming from? I suppose from the nursery. Was the nursery door open or closed? Another pause. Longer this time. Closed, I believe. And did you check on Emma? It wasn't my responsibility on weekends. That wasn't my question. Did you check on Emma when you heard her crying from behind a closed door? Ms. Bradford's face had gone pale. No. Why not? Because Mrs. Chen had specific rules about the weekend arrangements. She said Emma was fine and I shouldn't interfere. Miriam pulled out a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit C, text messages between Ms. Bradford and Mrs. Chen from September 17th. Judge Winters reviewed the document. Proceed. Miriam read aloud. From Ms. Bradford, I can still hear Emma crying. Should I check on her? Response from Victoria Chen. No. She's learning self-soothing. Do not enter the nursery. This is my child and my decision. The courtroom went silent. Ms. Bradford, Miriam said, does this refresh your memory about the weekend arrangements? Yes. Mrs. Chen had a method. She believed in teaching Emma independence early. By locking her in a room alone for 62 hours? I don't know about locking. I just followed instructions. You knew Emma was alone in that nursery. You knew she was crying. You knew the door was closed, and you did nothing. I was following my employer's instructions. Even when those instructions endangered a child. Tears ran down Ms. Bradford's face. I needed the job. I have student loans, and the position paid well, and Mrs. Chen said, she said rich families do things differently, that Emma had everything she needed, that I was being emotional and unprofessional to question her methods. How many times did you hear Emma crying behind that locked door? I don't know. Several times. Maybe a dozen weekends. And each time you did nothing. I did my job, that's all. Miriam's voice softened slightly. Ms. Bradford, you have a PhD in child development. You know what sustained isolation does to infants. Why didn't you report this? Because I was afraid. Victoria Chen is connected. Her father is a judge. I thought if I caused trouble, my career would be over. So you chose your career over a baby's safety. Ms. Bradford broke down completely. I'm sorry. I should have done something. I should have called someone. I was afraid. Judge Winters intervened. Let's take a 15-minute recess. During the break, Miriam found Marcus. That's it. We won. What? Ms. Bradford just corroborated everything. She confirmed Victoria locked Emma in the nursery. Confirmed the weekend isolation. Confirmed she knew and did nothing. Victoria's own witness destroyed her case. When they reconvened, it was Rosa's turn to testify. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity, wearing her best dress. Simple, neat, respectable. Victoria's lawyer tried to paint her as unreliable, as someone with ulterior motives. But Rosa was unshakable. Mrs. Delgado, Victoria's lawyer said, isn't it true that you filed complaints against Mrs. Chen because you wanted to keep your job? No. I filed complaints because a baby was being hurt. You claim to have evidence, but these photos of schedules, these recordings, couldn't you have fabricated them? I could have, but I didn't, and the hospital records confirm everything I said. You had access to the house. You had keys. Couldn't you have locked the nursery door yourself? Rosa looked the lawyer directly in the eye. Why would I do that? Perhaps for money. Perhaps Mr. Chen promised you a reward if you helped him destroy his wife. Mr. Chen didn't even know my last name until that night. I did what I did because nobody else was protecting Emma. Not Mrs. Chen. Not Ms. Bradford. not Mr. Chen. So I protected her the only way I could. By taking pictures and making recordings without permission? By documenting abuse. Yes. The lawyer tried to push further, but Rosa wouldn't budge. She'd seen what she'd seen. She'd done what needed to be done. Finally, Marcus testified. Miriam had prepared him thoroughly, but standing in the witness box facing the judge, Marcus felt the full weight of his failures. Mr. Chen, his own lawyer asked, why weren't you aware of what was happening to your daughter? Because I chose not to see, Marcus said. I was building a company. I was traveling constantly. I told myself that my wife was handling the home, that we had hired help, that everything was fine. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to know the answers. Do you take responsibility for your absence? Completely. I was a terrible father, not because I was malicious, but because I was absent. But there's a difference between being absent and being abusive. I should have been there. Victoria was there and chose to hurt Emma anyway. Why are you seeking full custody now? Because Emma deserves a parent who's actually present, who actually cares. I don't know if I can be that person yet. I'm learning. But I'm trying. And that's more than Victoria is willing to do. Victoria's lawyer cross-examined him aggressively, pointed out his 100-hour work weeks, his business trips, his admitted neglect. Marcus didn't defend himself. He acknowledged all of it. So you agree you're an unfit parent? The lawyer asked. I was unfit. Past tense. I'm working to change that. In 2 weeks, you've become a qualified parent? No. In 2 weeks, I've become a parent who's trying. That's what Emma needs. Someone who's trying. Then Victoria took the stand. She was composed, elegant, her testimony carefully crafted. She described postpartum depression, overwhelming pressure, the isolation of new motherhood. She painted Marcus as controlling, as someone weaponizing their daughter against her. I made mistakes, Victoria said, her voice breaking perfectly. I struggled with Emma, with bonding, with the loss of my own identity, but I never stopped loving her. I never wanted to hurt her. Mrs. Chen, Miriam said during cross-examination, did you lock your daughter in her nursery? I created a schedule to help her learn independence. That's not what I asked. Did you lock the door? Sometimes, for her safety. For 17 hours at a time? The timing wasn't always exact. You left a 6-month-old alone in a locked room for 17 hours. Yes or no? Victoria's composure cracked. You don't understand what it's like. The pressure, the expectations, everyone watching, everyone judging. I needed time to breathe. So you locked your baby in a room? I made her safe. She had bottles. She had a clean diaper at the start. She was fine. She lost 15% of her body weight. She developed a severe infection. She was hospitalized. Is that your definition of fine? I didn't know it had gotten that bad. Because you didn't check. For 17 hours you didn't open that door. I thought she was okay. Or you didn't want to know if she wasn't. Victoria looked at the judge. Your Honor, I love my daughter. I made mistakes, but I love her. I'm seeking help. I'm in therapy. I just want a chance to be the mother Emma deserves. But Judge Winter's expression had hardened during the testimony. When Victoria stepped down, Marcus knew which way this was going. The judge took 20 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, her decision was clear. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, Judge Winters said. This is a difficult case because both parents have failed this child in different ways. Mr. Chen was absent. Mrs. Chen was negligently present. However, neglect through absence is qualitatively different from active endangerment. She looked at Victoria. Mrs. Chen, your actions constitute serious child endangerment. You created a system to isolate your daughter. You ignored warning signs. You threatened those who tried to help. While I appreciate that you may have been struggling, Your choices put Emma at severe risk. Then to Marcus. Mr. Chen, you are not blameless. Your absence enabled this situation. But you have taken immediate and appropriate action since discovering the problem. You have cooperated with investigators. You have sought help. You are demonstrating a commitment to change. The ruling. Marcus received sole legal and physical custody. Victoria received supervised visitation only, 2 hours per week, with a court-appointed supervisor, no overnight visits. Both parents were required to attend parenting classes. Victoria was required to undergo psychiatric evaluation and therapy. Judge Winters concluded, Mr. Chen, I am giving you custody because you represent the safer choice for Emma. But do not mistake this for approval. You must prove that you can be the parent your daughter needs. If I see evidence of continued neglect or absence, we will revisit this arrangement. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Chen, you are fortunate that the district attorney has declined to pursue criminal charges at this time. However, that decision will be revisited if you fail to comply with this order. You will have the opportunity to rebuild your relationship with your daughter, but only if you can demonstrate genuine change. Do you understand? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel fell. Marcus had won. But looking at Emma sleeping in Rosa's arms in the back of the courtroom, Marcus realized victory was the wrong word. Nobody had won. Emma had lost 2 parents, one to work, one to narcissism. Now she was getting one parent who was learning how to be present. That wasn't victory. That was damage control. 3 months later, Marcus Chen's life was unrecognizable. He'd stepped down as CEO of Chen Technologies, moving into a chairman role that required minimal day-to-day involvement. His board had protested. His investors were furious. His stock value dropped 23%. Marcus didn't care. He'd restructured his entire life around Emma. Morning feedings, pediatrician appointments, tummy time, reading. Even though she couldn't understand the words yet, he read to her every night. He'd converted his home office into a playroom. His calendar, once packed with meetings and flights, now revolved around Emma's schedule. Rosa had become Emma's daytime caregiver and Marcus's co-parent in all but title. She lived in the guest house now, with a salary that reflected her actual value rather than market rate for household workers. You're paying me too much, she'd said when he presented the offer. I'm paying you what you're worth, Marcus had replied. You saved my daughter's life. There's no amount of money that covers that debt. Victoria attended her supervised visits religiously. Marcus watched from the observation room, saw her hold Emma stiffly, saw the performance of motherhood rather than the reality. But Emma was too young to know the difference. Maybe that would change. Maybe Victoria would change. Marcus had stopped hoping for either. The media attention had died down, replaced by new scandals. New stories. Chen Technologies had recovered, not to its previous heights, but steady. Marcus had made peace with that. His father's old restaurant had closed years ago, torn down to make room for luxury condos. But Marcus found the chef, a 73-year-old man still cooking in a small kitchen in Flushing, and commissioned him to teach Marcus how to make the dishes his father used to cook. Why do you want to learn this? The old chef asked. Because I want to cook them for my daughter, Marcus said. I want her to taste what my father made, to understand where we came from. Every Sunday, Marcus cooked these recipes. Emma was too young to eat them yet, but she sat in her high chair and watched, babbling approval. Rosa taught Marcus about his daughter's personality, how Emma loved music, specifically old jazz records, how she got cranky exactly 45 minutes before needing a nap, how she had her father's stubborn streak and her mother's ability to charm. She's going to be formidable, Rosa said one evening. watching Emma determinedly work to grab a toy just out of reach. "I hope so," Marcus replied, "as long as she's also happy." His therapist, because yes, Marcus Chen was in therapy now, asked him during a session, "Do you think you've changed?" Marcus thought about it carefully. "I think I'm becoming who I should have been all along, but that's not really change. It's just stopping running away." "From what were you running?" "From being ordinary, from being like my father, working yourself to death for scraps. I thought if I built something big enough, made enough money, achieved enough success, I could protect myself from his fate. But I was so busy building that empire that I became exactly what I was trying to escape, just with better furniture. And now? Now, I'm trying to be present, to actually see my daughter, to understand that the only thing that makes you extraordinary is how you treat the people who depend on you." He told Rosa about this conversation later that night. They were sitting in the living room, Marcus on the floor playing with Emma, Rosa in the chair reading. "Your father would be proud," Rosa said. "Would he? I failed at the one thing he cared about, family. He cared about family, but he also believed in second chances. In America, as the place where you could start over, make things right. That's what you're doing." Emma grabbed Marcus's finger and pulled herself to standing, a new skill she was immensely proud of. She grinned at him, and Marcus felt something break open in his chest. Love, terror, responsibility, purpose, all of it flooding in. On a Tuesday evening, 4 months after the custody hearing, Marcus's doorbell rang. He was feeding Emma dinner, sweet potato puree that she was enthusiastically spreading across her face and the high chair tray. He opened the door to find Victoria. She wasn't supposed to be here. The custody agreement was explicit about visit schedules and locations, but she stood on his doorstep, no makeup, hair pulled back, looking more like the woman he'd married than the one he'd divorced. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," Victoria said, "but I needed to talk to you. May I come in?" Marcus hesitated. Then, 5 minutes, in the foyer. "Rosa's here, so we're not alone." They stood in the entrance. Italian marble, expensive art, all the trappings Victoria had once insisted they needed. "I've been in therapy," Victoria said. "Intensive therapy, 3 times a week. And I've been doing the work, Marcus. Really doing it." "Good. I need you to understand something. I didn't think I was hurting her. I genuinely believed I was teaching her independence. My mother raised me the same way, locked me in my room when I was difficult, told me to self-soothe. I thought it was normal. It's not normal, Victoria. It's abuse. I know that now. But I didn't then. And I'm not excusing it. I'm explaining it. I replicated my own childhood without examining whether it was healthy. That's my failure." Marcus thought about his own father's overworked presence, how Marcus had replicated that too, how trauma gets passed down through generations until someone breaks the cycle. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "I want to apologize. To you? To Emma? To Rosa? I was wrong, catastrophically wrong, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for it, even if Emma never forgives me. Even if you don't." "I don't need your apology, Victoria. Emma does. She's 9 months old. She can't understand." "Then apologize anyway. When she's old enough, I'll tell her that you tried to make things right. That will matter." Victoria nodded. "May I see her? Just for a minute? I won't ask to hold her. I just want to see that she's okay." Marcus led Victoria to the kitchen. Emma sat in her high chair, covered in sweet potato, banging her spoon happily. When she saw Victoria, Emma smiled, that indiscriminate infant smile that didn't distinguish between mother and stranger. Victoria started crying. Real tears. No performance. She's beautiful, Victoria whispered. She's so healthy, so happy. You did that. You and Rosa. She's resilient, Marcus said. Kids are. I'm glad she doesn't remember. The locked room, the crying, the loneliness. I'm glad it won't haunt her. It might anyway. Trauma has a way of living in the body even when the mind forgets. Victoria wiped her eyes. Will you tell her about me when she's older? Will you let me try to build something with her? Marcus thought about it, about forgiveness and accountability, about Emma's right to know both her parents, flaws and all. If you stay in therapy, Marcus said, if you continue the work, if you show up to every supervised visit, if you prove over years, not months, Victoria, years, that you've genuinely changed, then yes, I'll help you build a relationship with her. Because despite everything, Emma deserves to know her mother, even if it takes time. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove me right. Victoria left. Marcus returned to Emma and finished feeding her dinner. Afterward, bath time, story time. The elaborate routine that had once seemed impossible now felt natural. Rosa came in as Marcus was putting Emma to bed. That was kind, Rosa said, letting Victoria see her. Kindness is easy when you have power, Marcus replied. Real kindness is choosing not to use that power to hurt someone who hurt you. Your father would definitely be proud. Marcus looked down at Emma, her eyes heavy with sleep, her tiny fist wrapped around his finger. I hope so, he said. But more importantly, I hope someday Emma will be proud. That she'll look at the father I became and think, he may have started wrong, but he finished right. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his daughter's new nursery, a bright, cheerful room with windows that opened and a door that never locked. Emma was 14 months old now, toddling around saying da-da and ro-ro, her name for Rosa, and attempting to say book whenever she wanted a story. The old nursery had been demolished. Marcus had hired a contractor to strip it down to the studs and rebuild it as a library. He couldn't change what happened there, but he could make sure it never happened again. Chen Technologies had been acquired by a larger firm. Marcus had walked away with enough money to fund 3 lifetimes, but more importantly, he'd walked away with time. Time to watch Emma grow. Time to teach her about her grandfather. Time to be present. Rosa's daughter had moved in next door, the paralegal who'd recommended Miriam Goldstein. She and Emma had become inseparable, 2 generations learning from each other. Victoria still attended supervised visits. She'd completed her therapy program and was now in ongoing maintenance care. Her relationship with Emma was tentative, careful, but growing. Emma called her Mama V now, not Mama, just Mama V. It was something. On Emma's 2nd birthday, Marcus threw a small party. Not a society event, just family. Rosa and her children and grandchildren. Miriam Goldstein, a few of Marcus's employees who'd become actual friends. And yes, Victoria, supervised by a social worker, but allowed to participate. Emma wore a purple dress, Purple Hearts, in fact, which Rosa had picked out thinking of the Purple Heart Stories values Marcus had tried to live by: compassion, connection, justice. Make a wish, baby, Marcus said as Emma stared at her birthday candles. Emma blew, or rather, spit at the candles, and everyone cheered. She looked around at the faces, at the people who loved her, and clapped her hands in delight. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat on the back porch with Rosa. You know what I think about, Marcus said, that night in the hallway, when I was standing outside that locked door and heard her screaming. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't told me the truth, where would we be now? Don't think about that, Rosa said firmly. It didn't happen. We saved her. That's what matters. But so many kids don't get saved. How many locked doors are there right now? How many children crying behind them? You can't save them all, Mr. Chen. Marcus, please. After everything, call me Marcus. Rosa smiled. You can't save them all, Marcus, but you saved the one you could, and you're raising her to be someone who might save others someday. Marcus thought about that, about Emma growing up knowing her story, about how he'd tell her someday about the locked nursery, about Rosa's courage, about the choice he'd made to finally see what was right in front of him. I want to do something, Marcus said. With the money from selling the company, I want to start a foundation for mandatory training for childcare workers about recognizing abuse, for support systems for overwhelmed parents, for reforming the way we handle child protective services. That's good. But Marcus, yes? Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not to assuage guilt, not to be a savior. Do it because it needs doing, and because you have resources that could help. But don't let it become another thing that takes you away from Emma. Marcus nodded. Rosa was right. There would always be another cause, another project, another reason to work 90-hour weeks. The challenge was staying present while still trying to make the world better. Balance, Marcus said. Balance, Rosa agreed. Inside, through the window, Marcus could see Emma's baby monitor on the counter. The light glowed green, the sound indicator showing peaceful sleep. He'd become obsessed with that monitor, checking it constantly, making sure Emma was breathing, that she was safe. Rosa noticed him looking. She's fine. She's always fine now. I know. But I can't stop checking. What if nothing? She's safe. You made her safe. Now you have to trust that. Trust. That was the hardest part. Trusting that he'd broken the cycle. Trusting that Emma would grow up differently than both her parents had. Trusting that presence and love could overcome the mistakes of absence and neglect. As Marcus sat there in the evening quiet, he thought about his journey. From ambitious college dropout, to billionaire CEO, to divorced single father. Society would call it a fall from grace, a cautionary tale, another example of how wealth and success don't guarantee happiness. But Marcus saw it differently. He'd been building toward this moment his entire life. Not the wealth, not the empire, but this. Sitting on a porch, watching his daughter sleep safely in her crib, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for his family. His father had worked himself to death in pursuit of something better for his son. Marcus had built an empire in pursuit of proving he was worthy of that sacrifice. And in the process, both of them had missed the point. The point wasn't achievement. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't status or success or any of the things Marcus had spent 40 years chasing. The point was this: being present for the people who needed you. Being brave enough to see the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. Being willing to change, even when change meant admitting you were wrong. That was the real inheritance Marcus had received from his father, though it took him 4 decades to understand it. Not the drive to succeed, but the courage to be human. Emma stirred on the monitor. Marcus waited, listening. But it was just a small sound. She settled back into sleep without crying, without needing him. That was good. That was healthy. Emma learning to self-soothe, the real way, in a safe environment where she knew her father would come if she needed him, not Victoria's twisted version, where self-soothing meant being abandoned. "You're going to be okay," Marcus whispered, knowing Emma couldn't hear him. "We're both going to be okay." Rosa stood. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late checking that monitor." "Just a few more minutes." "That's what you said an hour ago." Marcus laughed. She was right. But he sat there anyway, watching the green light, listening to the peaceful quiet of his daughter's breathing. The billionaire had heard his baby screaming. The maid had revealed the heartbreaking truth. And together, they'd saved a child from the locked nursery door. But more than that, They'd saved each other. Rosa from invisibility, Marcus from his own ambition, Emma from a cycle of trauma that could have defined her life. Some stories don't have perfect endings. This one didn't either. Victoria would always be Emma's mother, complicated and imperfect. Marcus would always carry the guilt of his absence. Rosa would always remember the weekends she'd listened to Emma cry and felt helpless to intervene. But imperfect endings are still endings. And in this case, the imperfection was also the triumph, because everyone involved had chosen to do better, even when it was hard, even when it cost them something. That, Marcus thought, was the real story. Not the crisis, but the choice that followed. The decision to see, to act, to change. He checked the monitor one last time, then turned off the porch lights and went inside. Tomorrow, Emma would wake up safe. She would eat breakfast with her father. She would play with Rosa. She would grow another day older, another day stronger, another day further from the locked nursery, and Marcus would be there to see it finally.